Right, there we are. Welcome to those of you who already joined us. We'll be waiting a couple minutes till the others join as well. Expect that we will start about 3 minutes past at the latest. All right, it's 3 minutes past. I see that we have only one person present as of yet. Dutch speaking as well, but I do suggest we do it in English and that we simply get started and wait for others to join, and they can just join us as they please. Good thing is that this is recorded, so to those who can't join us live, we'll be able to share it with them in the recording. And I just expect that others will join a bit later. But let's just get started. I already mentioned in the chat box of this webinar that we can use the chat box to either give comments or suggestions or whatever you like, but that we have a separate Q&A section within the Teams environment. I'd like to refer to that area to pose some questions because we can easily group the answers as well, which makes it a bit easier to keep track of what has been said. Above all, welcome to this webinar. Let me start by explaining a little bit, very briefly, about why we have organized this webinar. Well, quite simply, first of all, we like to spotlight companies that are taking the right steps towards more circular practices. That's what we like to do at Cirmar. We like to take steps, meaningful steps, conserving materials, conserving the quality of materials, knowing that that will have a positive impact on not just the environment, but also the way we do business on our continent. Additionally, we like to inspire, we like to inform and motivate others to get started as well. So that's why we have where we are joined today by Elro Bonges from Emma Safety Footwear, and we'll be discussing how they approach not just digital product passports, but quite importantly, the circular economy as well. What are they doing to take steps to make a difference. And regarding those digital product passports, which are quite prominently present in the title of this webinar, it's simply very relevant regarding the upcoming legislation on DPPs. Safety shoes, as part of that larger group of personal protection equipment, specifically, are not the first that will have mandatory DPPs. But they are on the long list, and the supply chain will already be confronted from 2027 onwards with mandatory DPPs, because textiles are one of the product groups that are the first to have mandatory DPPs. So it's relevant either way. And as we will discuss in this webinar, there are many more reasons besides legislation to get started. But for now, I think the best thing to do is to give the word to Elroy. So I'll give you the control over the slides and take it away.
Okay, thank you, Jasper. So hi, everyone. My name is Elroy Bongers. I am the rather new head of innovation and sustainability at EMMA. I joined 6 months ago. But I've had a similar job title the 12 years before at Dunlop Protective Footwear, so quite familiar with circular safety footwear. Let's see. First, to introduce EMMA. EMMA is a near 100 years old company, originated from the mining industry that at one day in time was flourishing in the south of the Netherlands. Where the Dutch state mines, or DSM operated mines, where obviously there were quite a lot of mine workers also getting injured, and they were offered an alternative employment type in the form of refurbishing the footwear that the miners were wearing. So we truly originate from circularity in that sense and have our roots in refurbishment. And we have been a social workplace for a very long time, decades really. And are still partially today. So we have almost 50% of our workforce is still falls under social employment. And we have a good track record on circularity in more recent years, where we have been one of the founders of the Circular Footwear Alliance, and nowadays Green Gear Alliance, a reverse logistics initiative that we launched in the Netherlands. In the more recent history, we've also become part of the Hultafors Group, where you see some of the brands in that group as well, all very much driven and ambitious in ESG, sustainability. So we are proudly part of that group as well. Our mission is to lead the safety footwear industry into a circular future through innovative design, circular models, and bold sustainability goal. So that's our mission. Circularity, sustainability have been ingrained in our heritage, but still is very much in our mission and vision statements today. There is a lot of achievements that we can report on. When it comes to reducing energy, we have over 6,000 solar panels here in our factory in the south of Limburg. We have a lot of product innovation done in the past couple of years, a lot of recycled content, fishing nets taken from the North Sea. So a lot of good effort has been made. I don't want to get too much into all those details, but we do have a sustainability report launched. So feel free to look it up and find more details and send me any questions if you have. For today, I want to focus a little bit more on the circularity chapters as we see them. Circularity can be a very broad topic. There can be lots of little and bigger things that you can discuss, but today I want to just really focus on 3 things, also in relation to the digital product passport. But for us, really, the images on the left is one of the key things that we see, envision when we talk about circularity, the waste at the end of life. And for us, the number 1 chapter that we've, in a sense, completed, or at least initiated, is to have reverse logistics, preventing those products to go into waste streams, even incineration. We think there's more valuable things to do with those materials, which require reverse logistics, which is something that's quite daunting, quite difficult, quite complex for a lot of brands. But I'm very happy that EMMA has taken those steps already a lot of years ago. Then there's two other chapters I will discuss. One is traceability, and the other is design. And those three things we believe are really key ingredients, if you will, in creating a circular economy and making something also that is feasible and also viable. I'll get back to this image after I give a little bit more detail on those three chapters in the next slide. So reverse logistics, keeping materials in the loop. As I said, we are one of the original founders of the Circular Footwear Alliance, where we've initiated this reverse logistics. We have recently been joined by a lot of other brands, also some of our Hulteforce Group sister brands, and have extended our proposition or our take-back system really towards full gear, full PPE, so not only footwear. So more product types are now included in our reverse logistics, and we're now building to get more touch points, more collection points in the market, which is focused on, let's say, Benelux, but then we're also looking into expanding that over the borders. Ultimately, what we really need is scale to have a very big pile of, as you see, those footwear end-of-life products, which for us is not just end-of-life, it's also the beginning of a new life. Now, when we look at the second chapter, traceability, we see this as something really taking away hurdles. You can imagine if you have this big pile of products, you need to get to a very efficient level of sorting in terms of products and material types, but also material quality. You need to make sure that the products that are in there, the materials, comply to regulations. You want them to be grouped together so you can create separate streams of mono materials. And having traceability of those materials also enable recyclers and other stakeholders in the supply chain to have an approach to say, okay, this can go to that player, that recycling process, and really build a plan from those materials onwards. I added the image or the model, let's say, on the right, where I think there's a couple of layers of let's say, maturity of digital product passports. Or traceability in general. I think in our industry, we are still in a bit of a low-fi, low-tech situation. We have QRs or even NFC technology used to identify products, but the products themselves are still quite traditional. Scale is still small, although increasing. And so for us at this moment, a digital product passport, DPP, is really about providing information to the, let's say, the innovators, the front runners in circularity, and to provide them with the information that they would require, that they would need. But it's also for us a way of building trust and saying, we have this ambition. We believe that circularity is the future, and we will make sure that we will continue providing you with information. So please, invest in your machinery, invest in your efforts. Because we can only achieve circularity with the full supply chain. In the future, I think more high-tech, hi-fi technology might come up. RFID will probably be next. It's already embedded in some products. Then maybe RFID is enough in the future, but maybe some vision AI-driven or AI-supported technology might come up. And I think over time, also in terms of design, you will see more modular products, more monomer products that will make it easier to sort. And obviously, scale should continue to increase because the more material there is, the more interesting from a viability or economic perspective circularity becomes. The third chapter is on design. Again, nowadays we have traditional products and especially footwear, very complex, a lot of different types of materials fixed together quite permanently in order to create high quality footwear. But ultimately we need to an extent reverse that thinking. We see that there are two major trends or solutions in this field, where one is the route to monomer products, where you can have full permanent fixtures or bonding between components. right? Because as long as they are from the same building blocks, you can also recycle them in the same way. So you would create just one, pile of monomer products, which ultimately will be one material stream. The other direction, obviously, is have a more modular approach, where you can easily disassemble pieces of footwear and to again create piles of monomer materials to create high quality streams that can very effectively be recycled. So coming back also to that first slide, for us, key chapters again. One, we need to have a reverse logistics. We cannot have oceans or lands be filled, and also incineration. Although there are some benefits to it in terms of energy recovery, we believe that there's a lot more elegant and better solutions to those materials. So that's one that we've gone quite far in. Being able to support the rest of the supply chain in doing effective recycling is where traceability comes in, is where we see the role of a DPP. And then ultimately design should simplify and also make it more effective and more efficient to recycle those materials. And so again, ultimately, circular economy, circularity should create something that's feasible, obviously, but also create a viable business model in the future. As a final part on DPP and also on Cirmar, we have a long-standing relation. We've been working together quite some time, which Jasper will explain a bit more in next slides. I saw this image on the right upper corner on LinkedIn somewhere about the entire landscape of service providers in sustainability, which can also be quite daunting. So one of the reasons why we're quite happy to work with Cirmar is that they have a really like a DPP focused approach. It works well, it's dynamic, it's easy to change, and you can actually take use of quite some additional services in their platform. They are very expert driven. They know all about compliance. They know the legislation that's coming, which can also sometimes be difficult for any brand or company to kind of keep track of legislation and all the movements there. They are fast in service. It's a relatively small team, but with a good skilled technology, and again with a lot of expertise on circularity. Really, also the founder has or I wouldn't even say if it's 20 or 30 years experience in circularity, but Jasper, you can say that in a couple of minutes. And one thing I really appreciate is also the interface and design. I also have a design background, so for me also, the understanding of a DPP not being a very technical looking and something that feels and people experience as very technical can be daunting, but it's very interactive, it's well presented, so that makes it also easy for people to use and nice for people to use, and it needs to be used because it can really create benefits in the full supply chain of circularity. All right, so back to you, Jasper.
Yes, thank you so much for the kind words, obviously, but moreover for your story, because I think it's well worth learning about what you guys are doing, and I think it should and can and will inspire others to take similar steps. And I do hope that initiatives like what you're doing with reverse logistics will take more flight over the coming years to build the scale that we need to basically feed the circular economy with materials. I'll be taking over from here, and what I'm going to be doing is dive a little deeper into our solution without getting too technical. I don't think that's what we should be doing here, but we want to mostly look at the role that digital product passports play and will increasingly so play in relation to that circular economy. And basically our starting point, and that's why I wanted to start with this slide, is that we don't need legislation to take care of our future. So I want to steer away a little bit from the legislation because there are so many more reasons to get started with digital product passports and circular economy as a whole. What we see is that customers are demanding more and more transparency, insights into what they're purchasing, but also within organizations, what kind of design choices can we make and what is the effect of design choices. And moreover, we need to generate value. Companies need to generate value to exist, and that's fair. And one of the ways in which we can take meaningful steps is by trying to generate value by recovering materials and by reusing them, by finding new applications for used materials. And that becomes a whole lot easier if you have organized your organization in such a way that you can support that. And many of the things that Elroy has already discussed sort of chip in to make that happen. And before I dive deeper into that very statement that we have on this next slide, the DPPs support circular products, I wanted to take a very brief look back at how basically the cooperation between Cirmar and EMMA was established. Because we are not just a DPP service provider, our roots are in the circular economy. We created this digital product passport platform because circular strategies, concepts, circular products, they require sharing information. It's actually as simple as that at its core. And DPPs are a great way to do so effectively. They allow not just the end customer, so the person that actually has the product in hand, to access information, but DPPs also offer tools to give access to that information for other supply chain partners, to also give them information to make more informed choices about the way they use materials and to be able to recover them as much and at as high quality as possible. So what we generally did and have been doing for quite a while is talk to companies, advise companies on how to organize all of this. And that's where the DPP eventually comes into play as well. Because if you look at generating circular progress, so taking steps on that ladder towards as much reuse and as much recovering of materials as possible, you have to take, you can basically push a lot of buttons. And I wanted to touch upon a few of those buttons that we have explored with EMMA in the past, and that cooperation goes back all the way to 2017. But it's a general approach that can be applied to many more organizations. And it basically boils down to a couple of things. We always look at how can we make the best of products as they already are. That's what passive recycling is. So if we don't have control over the design of products, or because products are already in the market and we simply need to do something with them, what is the best way to recover the materials from these products? And that might not be fully circular. We might not be able to use all of it, but there's always a better option than simply incinerating all of the product. And that starts with initiatives like reverse logistics, being able to get those products back in the first place, and then looking into solutions with recyclers to basically make the most of those products. The next step, as was already part of the letter that Elroy discussed as well, is active recycling. So not just looking at products that are already in the market and making the most of what's already there, but looking into design of products, applying as much monomaterial as possible, looking into possibly toxic materials and how to phase them out, and also looking at the composition of materials, using glues that are either soluble, so you can basically retrieve components from products, or not use it at all. That's a challenge, but that's a very important next step towards more circularity. Because if you don't start with the design of products, it will become more difficult to be able to recycle, refurbish, or reuse them at the end of their use. And then the last point that I wanted to touch upon briefly is materials pooling. Because what we see happening with a lot of companies is that they want to be circular in the sense that they want to recover materials from their own products, and that has to become the same product again. But that's not necessarily the truth, nor is it necessarily viable. So what we look into is how can we basically connect various supply cycles to make sure that materials that have been used in one cycle but can't be used again are used in a different supply cycle and vice versa. There's a lot of exchange already happening in various supply cycles of materials, and we are always looking to grow those volumes because, as El already mentioned, we need scale. We need as much materials to be recovered in order to basically feed circular products. So that's a very important one as well. But how then does the digital product passport, and in our case, C-passport, factor in to all of these developments? Well, in essence, it's basically helping circular products come to fruition. And what do we mean by that? We basically mean sharing data that allows all of these supply chain or supply cycle partners to contribute to the circularity of a product. And obviously, that starts with the design of a product. So what our solution does is it allows for comparisons between various compositions of products. You can easily exchange materials and directly also calculate the impact of what that would mean. So that's on the design side of things. But obviously, you also have reverse logistics partners, you have an end customer, and they need specific pieces of information as well, be it the material composition of a product, be it certain encodings to be able to run data with one system and the other, or be it simple care and maintenance instructions, or perhaps a take-back system that is in place for customers. All of that information is quite easily lost if you don't make use of digital solutions like a digital product passport. Because as we know for garments, be it personal protection equipment or textiles just for consumers, labels are easily cut out and often cut out. And information on more complex products that is in a manual often ends up in the bottom of a drawer, if not in the bin. So digital product passports offer a great way to make sure that that data is accessible, that it's continuously accessible, and also that it's expanded over time. Because as Elroy rightly mentioned, it's a process to become more circular. And what you don't know right now is something you can't communicate yet with your customers. And a digital product passport, and Elroy also mentioned that ours is a dynamic solution. And what we mean by that, first and foremost, is that you can add information and specify information later on. So if there's no specific recycling solution for a product in place at this point in time, there simply isn't, so you can't communicate about that. But if you then find one, you can later on add it to your digital product passport and informing all of your supply chain partners with that information. And hence make sure that the product is as circular as possible, because that is basically all you can do. You can try to provide as much information as possible to basically inform those that are not involved in the design process to basically do that bit. So that's all the sorts of information that you can enter and record in a digital product passport. So let's look at a specific example right here, because one of the things that I think Emma already does quite nicely is that they actively communicate with their digital product passports. They don't just use it for internal processes and to make comparisons, but they also use it to communicate directly with customers, and they do so in two ways. They have a link to the digital product passports on their website, so customers can look directly as they're browsing online at the digital product passport that they've created. But it's also in the label of the shoe. So there's several ways to get access to this information, which is actually really important. As Elroy previously mentioned, everyone in the landscape of DPPs right now is very much focused on QR codes. And from legislation, we might even see that the QR code will be the go-to carrier to basically get access to that data. but we're not standing still, and who knows what kind of ways of access you might need in the future. And we believe it's essential to try and always walk several paths towards that information, because even if a label is cut out, you always want to have access to that information. And one of the ways of doing so is by connecting it to your website. So I think that's a great example. What you can find in these passports is also as detailed as you like. So what we see here is that we have a very detailed materials pie, as we call it, of the materials that are in this product passport, in this product. But our platform allows you to go as deep into that data as you want. So there's quite a lot of companies who haven't taken a lot of steps yet towards not just circularity, but even access to and insights into what the exact material compositions and impacts are of their products. So our solution basically allows you to only register very broadly what kind of materials are in there. That may be metals, plastics, biogenics, minerals. And you can basically start improving from that point onwards. So what we see here is that we have a quite detailed description of exactly what kind of materials are in there. And our solution then allows you to automatically calculate the associated impacts with that as well. So that's a couple features that are quite interesting to point out. But we have a very brief list of what we think are the absolute most important aspects of our solution, but also of other solutions that are out there. We think it's essential to look at digital product passports as a tool to transform, and that means that the starting point isn't perfect. So data is not 100% perfect now, and it won't be perfect in 10 years' time, but we can already take big steps and make sure that we have that first 80 to 90% of the data that we want and that we need to support circularity in place. So what you do with our platform is basically enter the data that you have, gain insights, and start sharing with supply chain partners and customers. And some key characteristics of how we approach this is that it's dynamic, and it's dynamic in several ways. I already explained that you can always alter, you can always update your data input. That means you can specify materials, but you can also add instructions, possibly even, for instance, a take-back system with rewards if you want. You can add anything you like over time, but it's also dynamic on the data side that we provide. So we have connections with internationally validated databases with impact figures, and those evolve over time. We have a couple of times a year we update the impact data as well. So that also means that the insights on the impact of your materials and products also get updated over time. Additionally, we always have a layered structure in the passports, which means that you have an internal version of the passport that you use as a company, but also external version or external versions of that DPP that you can share with specific supply chain partners. That's very relevant because you might not want to share everything with everyone, and you want to gain some or have some control over that. So that's what we offer as well. It's sector agnostic, which basically means that it's compatible with all products. And there's a very simple reason why we approach it this way. We will have a very complex landscape of DPPs over the coming years. And there are so many companies that have various product categories in their catalog. But additionally, we want to pool materials. We want to exchange materials between products. And in order to do so, we need to create solutions that can cope with various products, with various information points that you want to share of these products. So that's why we are sector agnostic. We also have some connected features for comparison and reporting that were already mentioned. The DPP is not something that stands on its own. Companies already gather a lot of data in product information management systems or ERP systems. We offer ways to integrate that information and use it to create passports. But on the other hand, we also offer download possibilities to use your data from the digital product passport for reporting and maybe other purposes as well. And lastly, but not unimportantly, you want to stay ahead of the curve. And we believe that starting or continuing to do more with digital product passports right now is the way to go, because legislation is on its way. And that is already quite steep to get started after everything is in concrete. But even before that legislation, it just makes sense to start learning about what you already can do and basically make sure that you're ahead of competition. So that's the most important things I wanted to share about the solution as such. And I wanted to briefly touch upon a couple examples of other purposes for digital product passport than just sharing data. We have a couple use cases which I wanted to point out. Center parks, firstly, where we see that they build holiday homes and they have holiday home parks where they want to know what kind of impact it makes to choose for one material or the other. Additionally, they want to know what kind of furnishing they should use, and they want to record the information on those furnishings to be able to find next uses for them. And that's some of the ways in which it's not a product that you would find on the market. It's a completely different area of work, but they still use a DPP to gain insights and then to make sure that whatever products they are using, even if they're not selling those, whatever next use is possible for those and how they can organize that. That's all recorded in the digital product passport. Alfaios, another one I wanted to point out, they've been using it over the past few years, not just to communicate in a very similar way as Emma Safety Footwear has been doing, so directly with customers, but also to feed reporting and even to win government tenders where they require basically that the company takes charge of the materials they are supplying. So what happens to them after use? How can we make sure that they are retrieved, recovered, and reused in new products? So I think that's a very inspiring way to look at digital product passports as well, as a way to generate not just new business cases, but also to basically prove that you can actually make sure that recycling, refurbishment, and reuse is put into practice. Another slightly more high-tech solution is Solar. They generate or they create lightweight solar panels, so photovoltaic panels, and they have created various digital product passports for their solution, in which they also switch on and off what kind of information they want to share, because you can imagine that the information in there is quite sensitive to competition. They don't want to just basically spill the beans on how they have created their products. So they use various compositions or levels of basically showing what they have been doing to communicate about that. And lastly, Jumbo is a quite interesting case in which, together with a whole landscape of partners, we created a concept of the circular supermarket, in which the goal was basically to transform from a mostly linear way of furnishing the supermarket towards as circular as we can. And it basically meant that we shifted from about 80 to 90% waste after a refurnishing or during a refurnishing process to over 90% circular, in which all furnishing elements were recorded in digital product passports. And we can therefore basically see not only what their use period is, what should happen to them after use, but also what the associated impacts are, and therefore what kind of basically positive impact we're making by making the shift from linear to more circular practices. A very brief last insight into how the specific impact calculations work in our solution. We basically need 3 ingredients to do so, and that's the material composition, and if possible, a product composition, the end of use of a product, is it incinerated, is it recycled, is it refurbished, or possibly even a combination of those. Perhaps a part of the product is incinerated and a part is recycled. You can specify that. and that impacts the eventual impact figures. And lastly, the weight of products. It's that simple, and you can dive as deep as you want into more specific impacts. The source data we use is similar to that which is used by LCA consultants that you might be familiar with, and consists of two large databases, EcoInvent and Ansys Granta. The latter, which is not that commonly used, but we have used it for quite some time now, because it offers us a lot more technical data, very specific materials that simply aren't available in EcoInvent. So in order to take it a step further, we have been using that database as well. The databases are ISO certified, and the processes that we have installed to be able to calculate also support ISO standards and all sorts of impact calculating standards. And if you want more information on that, we can always supply you with that. So feel free to ask. Then we are almost at the point where we can conclude the webinar. But before we do so, I wanted to look ahead very briefly and basically, let's call it what it is, a call to action. Because what helps us transition towards a more circular economy? We believe firmly that creating, making, and using digital and organizational structures to support circularity is an important first step. Reverse logistics is an essential part, but as I have tried to explain, if you do not have digital tools in place to make sure that you follow up on those initiatives, to inform your supply chain and your customers about what they should do in order to make it happen, then a lot of the potential basically goes to waste, which is what we're trying to prevent. Secondly, please don't expect perfection. A transition requires learning and improving, which was, I think, a crucial element to Elroy's story, but also something we firmly believe in. Let's focus on the last couple percentages of perfection once we get there, and that might still be a way out, some ways ahead. And lastly, please look beyond emissions. Value and quality of materials and retention of those that value and quality are at the heart of the circular economy, and the impact values will follow suit. Please do experiment with calculating impacts of products, because it will give you exactly that insight. If you deal with materials more efficiently and are able to recover more materials, you will see that that affects the impacts positively. And I think that is where we're trying to go. So that basically concludes the story that we wanted to tell. From my side, I want to thank those of you present in the call already, and know that we will make the recording publicly available so you can share it with colleagues, others that might be interested. And I want to thank Elroy, obviously, for his contribution and interesting talk. Do you have anything you wanted to add, Elroy? No, nothing from your side. All right. Thank you so much for participating, and have a good day.